Mr. Phil Soussan.
Hey, Ryan.
How are you doing, man?
Good, how are you?
Very good to see you.
What's happening?
Man, very good to see you.
Great, good to see you too.
So how'd the bumper extravaganza go, man?
Yeah, not good.
Not good?
Good,
Not
not
good
good at all.
I heard the stories, but you know, I wanted to cross my fingers and hope for the best for you.
Well, you know, I love painting and stuff, but the problem is the facility's not great. So anytime I pull a spray gun out, all of a sudden somebody turns the wind on,
Yeah.
and then you get dust. And then you
I
have
know
to put it
that.
back. Yeah.
I know how that goes.
Playing this catch-up game, and to make a long story short, I had to buff it so much I started buffing through the paint. I just said, you know what? Maybe it's time to come and see Ryan because you are the expert. But the best part about this is I get to work with you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Not many people want to do that after the first time, you know, but let's see what you got, man. Let's see what we got.
Well, it's not
Too bad. Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, yeah. As you see, basically what's happened is cut back through into the primer.
Yeah.
And that's why you're seeing that darkness. And I gave up. I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. I don't think the clear coat was very good either. So
It looks like the prep work you did pretty good. And this right here, we could actually kind of do a little fill on that and try to polish that out. It might be a scratch from just putting the bumper on.
oh gosh.
Those look familiar. I know those scratches. I don't think it's that bad, to be honest with you, but it's salvageable. What we'll do is we'll get this off. We'll sand it all down 320. Get some urethane primer. That way we've got a nice clean virgin surface to work with. And then we'll sand that down and then we'll paint and fingers crossed everything comes out great out of the booth. So one time. I'll pull you in over there, I'll grab some tools and we'll start tearing this thing down.
Awesome. Cool.
Done deal.
Great.
So I got the tools, we're all ready to go.
Good.
There's a reason why you're not the typical customer that would drop a car off, say, call me when it's done, and we do all the work.
Absolutely.
You've attempted this on your own with some phone guidance from myself.
Yep.
Why is that the route that you chose on this?
I don't know if you know this, but my whole life I've been restoring motorcycles.
know that.
So yeah, so I've been doing that since I was probably 15, 16 years old. I did it for years, and at one point in the early 90s, I even took a year off and went to work for a guy in LA who had a restoration business for vintage motorcycles. Like the newest motorcycle was like 1965.
Wow.
And that's what we did for about a year, and I had a lot of fun doing that. It's a very cathartic thing, and for me, I'm in a business where you can do everything exactly right and the outcome is not guaranteed.
Right.
But when it comes to mechanics, I know if I do everything right, and restoration, if I do everything right, the outcome is going to be guaranteed, with one exception, that was this.
Paint is very, very unforgiving, man. It really is. And to redo it, you know, you rebuild a carburetor, you have an engine or even electrical issue, it's forgiving. You can find your mistakes. With paint, you can make 1,000 mistakes 1,000 times. Redo it, do it again, do it again, do it again, do it again, and still not know what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you brought it to us, but you said you take time off. Time off from what?
From music, you know, I'm a bass player, I'm a writer, I'm a producer, but I'm best known as a performing bass player. So I've been with a lot of different bands. Back in the day, was with Ozzy Osbourne for many years. I wrote probably one of his biggest hit singles, Shot in the Dark. And after that, I worked with Billy Idol, I worked with Vince Neil, I worked with Steve Lukather, Edgar Winter, Richie Kotzen, John Waite, many people. Now I'm in a band called Last in Line. We have actually rehearsed at Danny's studio before. And I first started coming to Las Vegas when I was in the Raiding the Rock Vault show. They asked me to come and sit in during my downtime, and I started coming here, started getting to know everybody in the Las Vegas community. It's an amazing place. You see this great community of people they interact so much. Yeah, and you know, that's kind of how I got to meet Danny as well. We had a great connection when we started talking, not just about music, because I know he's passionate about music.
Like you wouldn't believe.
Yep, and his band Count 77 are spectacular, and they do it to perfection. You know, we had that to talk about, and the minute I started talking about motorcycles and talking about cars, then we were speaking a similar language.
Every time I go to Vamp, there's another well-known rock star there, just either hanging out or even playing on stage. The place attracts music, rock stars like magnets. It's crazy.
It's the place to be in Vegas.
Yeah.
People think about the Strip, but Vamped is the place to be if you're into rock music, if you're into bands. And one week you'll have a national act there, and next week you'll have a local guy who's got a great local project.
Yes.
You'll always see something great at Vamped.
Yep.
Always. There's never a dull moment.
That's interesting. So it's safe to say that you're one of the rock gods. I'll say it. You may not want to because I know you're humble, but I'm going to say it. I mean, you said Ozzy Osbourne. You had me right there.
I'll take that as a compliment. Thank you very much.
All right. So you said we need to get it up and get the wheels and tires off.
Wheel's going to come off.
Because you've done this, so I'm going to be your helper for today, this part anyway.
Opportunity to work with you and to actually get a little bit of hands-on training and painting, because painting is something I can certainly improve a lot as far as my skills go.
Customer taking his own bumper off. That's a first.
That comes out.
Bingo, bingo.
See, when you're a bass player, you have like strong fingers. You don't need wrenches.
We'll do what I call pots and pans. We'll do Scotch-Brite and dish soap and clean inside and out. Everything before we even start sanding anything.
Yeah.
And we'll know in the primer stage whether it's necessary to pull this foam out. Because if the primer fish eyes, I know the paint's gonna fish eye. I wanna get the wheels and tires back on it, and we can get it back down on the ground.
Yeah. This is very heavy. I'm just very strong.
We got a dual action sander, we just call it a DA. We've got an interface pad, which is actually just a soft, cushy pad.
Okay.
And we're gonna do this with 320. This is gonna give us a nice tooth to put a urethane primer on it. Urethane for these types of bumpers is best because it's got more flexibility to it. But I can also build it up to the point where we can get rid of any imperfections, rock chips, scratches, any of that.
So this is what we're looking for, getting rid of these things.
Yep, you wanna get rid of those. Sometimes they can be pesky. Like a pro.
Let it do the work, right?
Yeah. Careful, Phil. I'll put you to work. That's how it starts around here.
This is an education for me, and it is a very welcome education because there's a lot of mystery surrounding paint. It's so complicated and it's so involved. You just can't, read about this stuff until you get hands-on and start to do it.
So now we're at the point where we can get it into the paint shop, wipe it all down. Like I said earlier, I want to tape a few things off.
Right.
It just have no business having primer in them. We'll hit it with some urethane. Like I said, it's a more flexible primer. It's not a super high build. So this is what I do with my students, teaching them cups, because there's all these numbers on here, right? So it's really easy to pour up to a number, and then grab your next component and not know what column you were pouring.
That's a good idea.
So the primer we're using is a 5:1 to 10%. So that's five parts primer, 1 part catalyst, 10% reducer. So we're gonna pour a primer up to the 9. The best way to do this is actually use a scale. Paint is so unforgiving that humidity, what you ate for lunch, your cologne, your soaps, your shampoos, your everything can come into play. I'm going to use an adhesion promoter in addition to this. What an adhesion promoter will do is get in all the places primer won't in this case. And it adds a little bit more flexibility. We'll lay this right along that edge, just a little bit of an overhang. We're gonna go all the way down and around there. So you want about a 1/16 of an inch of an overhang. Bring it straight across to there.
Straight across to here?
Yeah. Not only are we masking to keep primer off of areas that it doesn't belong, we're actually gonna spray away from areas that it doesn't belong. As I'm spraying, pull the trigger back a little bit, that gives you air. Pull it all the way, you get material.
Right here? Right here. Up.
One thing you don't want to do is overcoat.
Right.
If you missed it and you're not happy with it, let it cure, let it tack off, and then get it up the next round. The best painters paint just like machines. Yeah, so
This is awesome.
you're done for the rest of your day.
Yeah. Morning. So we got on here is a guide coat. This black dusty coat here just shows us where we've sanded and where we haven't sanded. So we're sanding with 400 grit, just bringing it down to a nice smooth finish. If you see any black, it means we haven't got to that point yet. If you don't see any black, then it's been sanded.
Phil, I would say you did a pretty damn good job, man. Yeah, you've got everything prepped. The handful of burns that we have, they're not to the plastic.
Okay.
They're still within paint, so you know when you sand on plastic bumpers, they get all fuzzy and nasty.
Yeah.
They look horrible when you paint over that. If you do something for 10,000 hours, you're considered a master.
People say, how do you come up with a baseline? Well, I'll tell you what I don't do. I don't sit there and chart it out and then say, well, these are the right notes that corresponding. Normally, I'll just go with my instinct. I won't even listen to the track. The first time I listen to the track, I'll run a recording machine and I'll just play along to it. Because usually there'll be some instinctive, impulsive things that come from somewhere deep inside that will have the sparks of something unique and something cool to develop. Maybe what they mean by that 10,000 hours, and it's probably more than 10,000 hours, is you start to get a feel for what feels good, what sounds good, what looks good, and then when you see that new project come in, straight away you say, I think I know what might work here.
So I think this is good to go.
All right, very cool.
I got a stand set up in the paint booth. Now what's important about how we're setting this up right now is that it's sitting the same way it would be on a car. When a car is painted, if the car is sitting upright, all the parts have to be painted upright. So everything has to be oriented the same way as it is on a car. Otherwise, while the metallics flow down like we primed it, they'll flow down this way. No way in hell will they even come close to matching. Now what sealer does is paint does not stick to sand scratches, especially base coat, clear coat.
Right.
So you'll see painters paint over sanded areas. It doesn't work.
Oh, okay.
It has to be sealed. It has to be either an adhesion promoter, a wet bed, a sealer, something, because paint doesn't just stick to sand scratches. It's not how paint works. This we're gonna go with a light gray because it brings the color through better. You want the least amount of material on there covering, the least amount of millage as possible in your paint.
Yeah.
Obviously with the body work and the primers and everything up to that,
Yeah.
it's all over the place depending on the quality of the car.
I've got some guitars that you wouldn't believe how thick the paint that they put on it. I mean, and what happens is it eventually just breaks off.
Yep.
It breaks off.
I would. I've painted probably hundreds of guitars,
Oh, really?
and I know. Wood is still, even though it's dead, it's still a living substrate. It's still living, it's still breathing. If they're hot, they move. If they're cold, they crack.
Yeah.
If they're hot and cold, they're definitely gonna crack. And then the type of materials, you know, that's why they use nitrocellulose on guitars so much, is because it's so forgiving. It's still flexible, it still moves.
Yeah.
The only problem is it only lasts for so long. On a car, someone's not strumming their arm up and down on the paint, so it lasts longer. On guitars, eventually you just wear it down to the wood. So we'll do everything we can to make sure that it's dust-free before we start painting. First step is a tack rack. You don't want to go too fast because that stirs up the static too. Try not to pick it up too much. You want to just go back and forth. The more you pick it up, it pulls the dust back out of the rag, back on the surface. Second step, we have a stat gun. We call it the ray gun. Kills the static. That way the particles lay flat, they don't stand up, and they don't attract dust. The way this works is it's blowing the static with the dust off. Start at the bottom and work your way up, or you can start at the top and work your way down. Entirely up to you. I like to start at the bottom. Check it with the light. Make sure you've got full coverage everywhere. See down here? You gotta aim the gun up. Let this dry about 20 minutes, then we can spray our color. A base is mixed 1-to-1, so it's 1 part base, 1 part reducer.
So what solvent is this?
This is urethane.
Just urethane?
Yep.
And then you pour in there and it goes back to be recycled or something, right?
Yep. We recycle everything in-house. We got our sealer down. We did 2 coats.
Right.
First coat was fantastic. You did really well.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No heavy runs, no sags, no nothing. We got full coverage. Now it's time for the base. Now on the base, I'm gonna turn the pressure down a little more for you.
Okay.
What that's gonna do is give you bigger droplets. Don't even have to worry about taking your finger off the trigger.
Okay.
Just kind of wave it across.
All right.
But you gotta make sure, like we talked about last night, get to the end of the panel before you come back the other direction.
Got it.
The manufacturers, the machines that they use to spray these, they've got everything optimized to how much material is coming out. Everything has been measured to the nth degree.
Right.
This gets it closer to what the manufacturer does. You actually notice, see the blotchiness? And this really doesn't have the blotchiness. When you start stacking those droplets, you would think that this dries all nice and smooth and this dries real textury, but it actually doesn't. When the solvents evaporate out of that, it's just as smooth as that. We'll give that about 15 minutes to dry and then we'll do another coat.
So we'll do like 3 coats, right?
Yep. Ideally, we want to get this done in about 3 coats. If we try and get full coverage on the first coat, which is hard to tell yourself to stop, you end up running and modeling the base.
Right.
The painting day is always the longest day. The prep usually doesn't take that long. Worst case, it takes, all day, right? So let's say you've got 8 to 10 hours in your prep work. You can start and stop anytime you want during the prep work, and there's no time-sensitive material going on. But when it comes down to paint time, you're in it to win it.
There's a ton of people out there who want to paint. They're not going to be able to have all of these controls in place. So what is the best advice you give to somebody like that? What's the most critical thing?
Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. That really is it. In an environment that's not set up for paint, there really isn't enough overthinking. If you're wanting to get really quality stuff out of, say, a garage. I started in my garage. I did that all day long, but it took finding the nooks and crannies of dust, where the air's going through the door, what my neighbors are using on their yards to cause fish eyes on my paint. All those things came into play with that. Wow. So ideally, if you can get the hell away from your garage, that's what you want to do. But if you've got some acreage between your neighbors, then it really is just getting the materials that you're using and getting yourself acclimated to, in most cases, it's going to be the temperature, barometric pressure, humidity. Research everything. There's so much on YouTube and on the internet these days, some good, some bad, but the more you know, good, bad, or indifferent, the better your chances are,
Yeah, I've always had good luck painting in my garage, for example, but I'm almost always painting very small items. So I can sort of create a lot of space around, I can put some sheets around, I can wet the ground to keep the dust down, and that works just fine. But if I had to do something that was big, if I had to do a car or something like that, there's no way I would do it in the garage.
And even doing those things, wetting the floor, disc clean the walls, blow it all out, it's like a hospital tent there. That doesn't mean all the bases are covered. So that's where that hope comes in.
Hope, the ultimate strategy, right?
Exactly.
But this has been an eye-opener. I mean, really, it's the amount of work that goes into before you actually pick up a gun with paint and start painting.
Oh man, and that's one of the reasons, like with any craft, if you've got a customer and the customer sees you do that craft, whatever it is, well, that only took you an hour, that only took you 30 minutes, or it only took you a day. Why am I spending all this money? Well, it took me a day to do that, but 30 years to get good enough to do that in a day. that costs.
Somebody asked me the other day, how do you keep yourself motivated as a musician? And what you do is you keep challenging yourself. I try to learn something new and I go to bed feeling happy that I learned something new. And I wake up in the morning feeling depressed because I don't know enough about what I learned the night before. And that gives me something to work towards the next day.
I get asked a lot, you know, how do I keep coming up with different designs?
New ideas, right?
I don't build it up that big, number one, but number two, it depends on the customer. So we got our bumper all painted, color sanded and buffed.
And it looks absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, they don't look like that out of the booth, I wish. We didn't do any shortcuts. We didn't do any weird fixes. We followed protocol all the way to the end, and we're about to put this thing on, and it looks beautiful. Before we get the bumper on there, we've got all the compound squeegeed into the cracks and crevices that will never come back out again. We're gonna go ahead and touch up a few of the scratches, clean up around that bumper area, so we know that when the bumper goes on from here on out, I know all that was clean when the bumper went back on again.
And you know, one of the things I can really take home with this whole experience, I mean, for me, this has been about, you know, really about learning about the whole process. But the buffing and polishing stuff is stuff that anybody can do with some practice and knowing what they're trying to accomplish. There it goes.
When Phil and I were matching the paint on the bumper, getting as close as we could, I used a spot right around in here to do finger dabs just to see how close we were getting to it. A little lacquer thinner on a rag takes it right off. Once everything's put together and we've got all our fingerprints and handprints all over this thing, I'll go over it one more time with the polish and the foam pad, and she'll be ready to roll. Now, what was the reason for fixing this bumper? What happened to it?
Somebody backed into the car when it was in a parking lot. I came out and I saw that someone hit the other side, the corner, and because it was a self-healing bumper, it popped out, but the paint had cracked and broken off, and I sort of decided I was going to try to do a quick paint job on it in the dust-free environment of my garage, which turned out to be, as expected, not very good. Wow, that looks fantastic. This has just been an incredible experience. I just wanted to learn more about this.
Cool.
And see how it's done. And I mean, man, thank you.
That's it.
So I have this other car.
Isn't that always the final word?
Right. Thank you so much for overseeing this and allowing me to do this with you.
Oh, my pleasure. I'm anxious to see it out in the sun, see how we did on our color.
Take it out in the sun?
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's do that. It's pretty darn close.
I know. Well done.
Yeah, no.
Well done. Well, you have your life back.
Yeah, my life back.
Go back to playing music.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, that's great.
Very
Thank you,
cool,
Ryan.
Phil.
I'll be on my way.
So, thank you.